Mr. President, what do you think about the UK getting into business with China? Keir Starmer was in Beijing.
Well, it's very dangerous for them to do that, and it's even more dangerous, I think, for Canada to get into business with China. Canada is not doing well. They're doing very poorly, and you can't look at China as the answer. I know China very well. I know President Xi's a friend of mine. I know him very well, but that's a big hurdle to go over when you get Canada. The first thing they're going to do is say you're not allowed to play ice hockey anymore. That's not good.
This is a historic trip because this is the first time in 8 years that a British Prime Minister has been here on Chinese soil. 8 long years, a historic occasion, and we can feel that already. We've had key bilaterals yesterday with President Xi and also Premier Li. Very warm, very good meetings. Just the level of engagement that we hoped for on behalf of both of our countries to develop that comprehensive and strategic partnership that is both long-term and consistent. And that is the approach that I set out over the last 18 months. And yesterday we warmly engaged and made some real progress, actually, because the UK has got a huge amount to offer, and I was able to set that out. And as a result of our engagement, we've halved the tariffs on whiskey and also got visa-free travel to China for Brits. So really important access, symbolic of what we're doing with the relationship.
America's biggest allies keeping their options open. Well, earlier we showed you the British Prime Minister in Beijing calling for a more sophisticated relationship with China. UK not alone. Canada recently signed its own trade partnership with China, despite complaints from Donald Trump. The US president has been focused on new threats of tariffs and unpredictable foreign policy. Last week in Davos, Canada's Prime Minister said the old order was coming apart.
Thank you very much. It seems that every day we're reminded that we live in an era of great power rivalry, that the rules-based order is fading. Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition.
And America's allies aren't just turning to China. India and the European Union agreed a massive trade deal on Tuesday, and with the spat over Donald Trump's wish to annex Greenland, one European diplomat says we're dealing with a new volatile reality. What we don't know is, have America's allies given up then on the old order? Joining me now is Clayton Allen. He covers Washington for the Eurasia Group. Appreciate you joining us today. I think the India-EU deal was very interesting because they've been talking about that for 20 years, and both sides said it happened now because of issues with trade with America. So that's a really strong example of the reaction amongst allies to what America's doing. They're basically coming closer together themselves.
I would absolutely agree with that. I think that you've seen that across a number of different dynamics post-Greenland. Greenland and Trump's ambitions for control, I think, took concerns over U.S. unpredictability and untrustworthiness from the theoretical to the practical for a number of global leaders in Europe, Asia, and beyond. The EU-India trade deal, the Canada-China trade deal, and certainly the increasing openness that we're seeing from European capitals towards Beijing are all different expressions of that same concern.
Yeah, so Starmer, who's in Beijing right now, under huge pressure from some of the opposition parties, for example, saying, you know, the Secret Services have described China as one of the main security threats. But Starmer pointing out that this is a major ally, economic ally, that we need to work with. And there is a compromise there, but we need to move ahead with it. And obviously, the weakening ties with America play into that.
That's exactly correct. I think that what you're seeing is, in certain circumstances, I think it's a combination of the middle powers, as Carney put it, combining their forces to try to offset U.S. interests. In others, it's single major powers, the UK, Germany, and others, looking for economic relation with China, or at least stability, because they see the U.S. as potentially a less predictable economic partner, even taking away the security discussion. Tariff threats of trade barriers, unpredictable direction on any number of negotiation fronts. all of those reinforce the need for, if not an opening to China on the part of European allies, at least an effort to maintain stability there.
What about the impact on America? Because presumably if you've got India and Europe with a free trade deal, they're more likely to buy from each other when they can rather than the US.
I think it's really a story of where things go in the future, not necessarily eroding from where things are today. With India, that's a growing market. It's a market the US is very focused on accessing. There's a trade deal that in theory has been completed and has been sitting on a shelf for months. It hasn't been finalized because of last minute demands from the US side around weapons purchases and reduction in Indian purchase of Russian crude. It's also a case of US and India trade negotiations have historically always taken a very long time at the 11th hour. But the US is trying to access that same market. I think that's a clear reflection of where the US sees potential demand growth, potential economic growth, growth in FDI, and certainly the Europeans are now better positioned, at least as of today, to take advantage of that.
Is there something in the fact that China now looks so stable compared with America? And if you're going to sign long-term deals, you'd rather do it with a nation which is really strategic with a really long-term goal than one, you can't even predict from day to day.
I'd be careful about over-ascribing stability to China or framing the deals that have been struck as very long-term binding commitments. Look at the Canadian agreement. To call this a sweeping free trade agreement, I think massively overstates the import of it. It's more an effort to ease marginally some of the restrictions and some of the measures that have been taken, especially during the Biden administration, to try to close off Chinese access to Western markets. That marginal relaxation does not a free trade agreement make. So I think that we're yet to be at the point where you can say definitively, oh, China's this much more stable, much more strategic partner. No, it's just a partner, or it's just a market at this point that seems to have more immediate stability. I think long-term, the picture for China, the questions about their own economic growth, the sustainability of that, and certainly the impact of domestic fiscal stimulus within China all raise questions about their ability to continue to fill the role of a good trade partner or a productive one. The Europeans, I think it's understood, are also concerned about Chinese dumping of overcapacity into their market if this dynamic continues for long enough.
大家好，我是主播周玉琴。很多的朋友告诉我们，选择原版的太阳星全效克菲尔益生菌，它添加有羽衣甘蓝，健康再加分。而有睡眠困扰的朋友们，赶快选择蓝色包装这一款晚安加强版，绝对是更有感。每日克菲尔，时刻美好 ，Good Feel Good， 请上快点购为健康下单，而且要记得输入推荐代码，有额外的折扣优惠。太阳星全效克菲尔益生菌基础版、晚安加强版，新包装改版，内容不变，抽取更方便。要吃就吃最好的。